Alrighty. Howdy, folks. Jacob here. And today, well, with 53 man rosters, initial thoughts and opinions and stuff like that, and the preseason finally ending, I figured what better time now than to kind of give initial thoughts on the Minnesota Vikings. Initial 53 man cuts and stuff like that. But as you can clearly see, I am not alone in this one. That is right, ladies and gentlemen. The video that I've been hinting at for the past, honestly, couple months or so is finally coming true. As you probably know, this is Nick, aka Twisted Wrister Hockey. I've been subscribed to him for several years. Also been a longtime member of his channel too. So if you're interested in like hockey related content, hockey related videos, and hockey related history, definitely go ahead and check out his channel. And also go ahead and say hi, Nick.
Hey everybody. Yeah, not exactly a football backdrop here, but yeah, I've got a YouTube channel for those who don't know, Twisted Wrister Hockey, just NHL content. And yeah, Jake, of course, always appreciate your support, man. And yeah, I'm going on now, what, about 26, 27 years as a Vikings fan, more or less. And, still hoping for that one day when they put it all together and not rip our hearts out at the very last second.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love for that to happen too, but I mean, let's be honest here, Nick. We're we're both longtime suffering Vikings fans. Just when you think they couldn't rip our hearts out anymore, they rip our hearts out even more. So, but like I say, eventually, though, I definitely like where we're at. I definitely like the direction we're heading in. But of course, obviously today, as of Tuesday, August 27th, the initial rosters are out and the 53 man, cuts and stuff like that. But before that, though, hey, Nick, why don't you go ahead and give your thoughts and opinions on the 2024 season as you feel today?
Yeah. Man, I don't want to like start out as such a Debbie Downer, but just with some of the recent injury news, some of it we did see coming. With somebody like Reisner, we've been waiting for some sort of decision over the last, I want to say, almost couple of weeks. And of course, players coming off of injuries like Jefferson, and it's gonna be a tough season in terms of wins and losses. I think that, of course, the current regime has done a good job now, especially in this offseason, of kind of giving us a roadmap of what to look forward to. But the anchor to that is always going to be a quarterback, and so it's like, all right, we got to see what we can get out of Sam Darnold. If we can maybe play spoiler and make some teams' lives a living hell, that's what I'm hoping for this year. But yeah, I don't necessarily think that taking a step forward this year is going to show in terms of wins and losses, especially with how the schedule starts out.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, like for those of you who may or may not know here, the month of September is just an absolute slog here. Let me kind of go ahead and get the schedule up and going here while I kind of give, like my general thoughts and opinions and stuff like that. But let's just say, whoo, it is not an easy schedule to start here. So,
Yeah, I mean,
let me go.
their most winnable game in the first 2 months might be in week one.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong there. Just let me quick share my screen here. So we'll go ahead and start off with the schedule here, which, yeah, as you can see, it starts off with the New York Giants in New York, which I don't want to say is going to be an easy win, but like Nick said, this is probably our best shot to really get the ground running. Because after that, as you can see, at home against the Niners, at home against the Texans, and then we travel to Green Bay. And like I say, Nick, why don't you go ahead and kind of give your general thoughts on just the month of September in general? Because if we can go 2-2, in my opinion, I think we're starting off good.
I
Three and one would be a pipe dream, but 2-2 is sort of where I could see us being at.
Yeah, well, what's funny is that we already proved last year that we can beat two of these opponents, right? We won at home against San Francisco. without Justin Jefferson, right? And then we also won in Green Bay. No, sorry. We won the home game against Green Bay, didn't we? Didn't we
No,
won
it
the
was at Green Bay because the
Okay,
home
okay.
game against Green Bay was the Jaron Hall.
Oh,
Yeah,
that debacle, yeah.
yeah, that
All right.
was the Jaron Hall game.
So if somebody said, okay, imagine if you repeat last year in terms of actually chalking up a couple of dubs against these opponents. I mean, I'd be thrilled, honestly. Um, and then of course things will get easier eventually, but and then you have the Texans. Like that's going to be, who knows? That could end up being the most difficult game out of that stretch of three.
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, like I say, Houston is no joke anymore. Ever since last year, when I think everybody, was kind of thinking that, oh, they have some pieces, they'll be good, they'll be this, they'll be that, but I don't think anyone anticipated what Houston was actually able to do. And now they're not only, a contender for the AFC South, they're a contender for the AFC
And that's
in
saying a lot
general,
too.
especially because of Tank Dell stepped up. They have Stephon Diggs. CJ Stroud looks good. Our old buddy Daniil Hunter's anchoring the defensive line there. So it's like they have a lot of pieces, but what does save us, Nick, is 49ers at home.
Yeah.
Houston at home. We get two very tough matchups at US Bank Stadium. So if we can win one of those two and then split the road, if not get both on the road, because at Green Bay, while Green Bay is going to be an interesting opponent because they always are, we tend to always split with Green Bay. So if we can at least take one of these early games that we think are going to be tough, and then obviously we should beat the Giants, but, Danny Dimes has had a history against us. In fact, I think he's the reason why he's paid as much as he is and why everybody hates the Giants Giants land. If you haven't noticed that, like everybody in, like, just seeing the New York Giants preseason this year, let's just say
Oh,
if that's the Danny Dimes we get, we should blow him out by 30. I mean,
oh,
let's be honest here.
he threw that pick six, right?
Yeah, he threw a just
Yeah.
horrible pick six in the end zone. But
Yeah.
like I say, so that's the month of September. And then we get into October here, where we travel to London
That's right.
against the Jets.
Undefeated in London, I think we are.
Something like that. I know we have a winning record. Then we have our bye week, week 6, which, in my opinion, I would have preferred to have it more like week 9, week 10, halfway through the season. But coming home from London isn't the end of the world. And then week 7, which, by the way, if you happen to know my channel, I will be at this game. And Detroit is not a sleeper. And then we travel to LA for our Thursday night game this year. So, as you can see, the month of October is the Jets in London, bye week, week 6, at home against Detroit, and then that following Thursday at the Rams. So, again, another pretty interesting matchup of games. But it's going to be intriguing to watch because week 6, will Aaron Rodgers still be the quarterback at that time, or will his Achilles go pop goes the weasel again? Then, Detroit has just risen up to being one of the top teams in the NFL.
Yeah.
The Rams are very interesting because the Rams are always interesting. I mean, are they going to be the Super Bowl contenders? Like, how do they look without Aaron Donald? And then, of course, as you can see here, we also then week 9 travel to the Colts with AR-15, Michael Pittman. How does that experiment going to look? So, what are your thoughts on those next few games?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can underestimate the Colts if we, get Anthony Richardson for the full season, and the Rams give us a healthy Matthew Stafford, and that's going to be a challenge no matter what, I think. So, I mean, these games aren't that stretch right there between Detroit 4 days later in LA, and then Indy. Indy was that team that was kicking our butts back in 22 on Thanksgiving, right? Um, so it's kind of like, look, I can't say that any of those is a gimme. So, even though there might be a chance for the Vikings to be like 2-3 before the bye week. Then they kind of come back from London with a bit of a rude awakening. So, the good thing is by then, let's hope that, TJ Hawkinson is back and healthy. We'll see what happens with like Jordan Addison. We'll see what happens with, Dalton Reisner. Because, you need those weapons. You need that talent on the field to have a puncher's chance against these teams, I think. Unless Flores' defense basically plays like they were, in the middle of this past season, and Dallas Turner is just wrecking fools. But yeah, like the first 9 games or the first 8 games are, they give, I think to me, they indicate, among other things, but like looking at that schedule, it's like to me, when I look at this, it's hard for me to advocate that the Vikings can actually have a winning record this year.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I mean, we'll see here, just because the Vikings are, and you know this, Nick, too. The Vikings are a weird team in which the years we're not projected to do anything, we can go out there and win 5 or 6 in a row of games we're not supposed to. But like I say, we could also be around, like you say, like 2 wins, 3 wins going into week 9, with the whole Sam Darnold experiment blowing up in our faces. Or Sam Darnold could look like the next coming of Kirk Cousins. Like, I mean, let's be honest here. By this point, we'll kind of have a general idea of where the Vikings are going and like where the Vikings will be at. But I still expect us to be in the hunt at this point. Whether or not we actually can do anything with it, I don't know, just because this is about the point of the season where you kind of know where you're at. Plus injuries and all that stuff. I mean, like I say, we've seen enough just in the league how much things can change from one week to the next, one
Yeah.
month to the next, one game to the next. So it's like one of those things where, let's say if in Detroit, let's say they have an injury, or the Rams have an injury, or the Colts have an injury or something. Now we're looking at a completely different line. But with that said, though, yeah, I could see us being around 500 going into week 9 if I had to like guess. But like I say, we'll just wait and see, because by this point, this is about where we're going to kind of get our feet underneath us and kind of know what we have as a team. And then we go into, like I say, Indy. Then we travel to Jacksonville, then travel to Tennessee, and then we travel to Chicago around Thanksgiving time. So the next 4 games are at Jacksonville, at Tennessee, at Chicago, and then we come back home for the Cardinals going into week 13. And I'll go ahead and kind of pause there because,
Yeah.
well, the next matchup, well, just go ahead and savor that for a minute.
Yeah.
3 road games in a row here.
Yeah.
Going to Jacksonville, which is going to be an interesting team to watch. At Tennessee is going to be interesting to watch, because I don't know what to expect with Levis and all those guys. I mean, they lost Derrick Henry. They added Tony Pollard. They added a few weapons and stuff like that. So who knows? And like I say, Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence coming off of his injury and stuff like that. Now we're starting to kind of see, is Trevor Lawrence worthy of that contract extension that he got early in the offseason? And of course, Arizona. I mean, they're a sneaky team too. While they played like absolute garbage last year, once Kyler Murray came back, they looked like a completely different team. So you can never count out Kyler Murray and the Cardinals. So
Yeah.
like I say, this part of the schedule on paper should be easier. And then, of course, Chicago. How does Caleb Williams look? How do the Bears look? Because everybody's projecting him to be one of the top dogs, one of the top teams. But, like I say, if we know anything about Chicago, they always haven't had the greatest track record with quarterbacks. So, like I say, I mean, this is going to be another intriguing stretch where I think this is a more winnable stretch, but also don't take any of these teams light.
I think that's fair. The Vikings, if I'm correct, they actually played better on the road this past year. They were disappointing at home, so it doesn't bother me too much. We're in November, and if they were playing, let's say in Buffalo, if they were playing in New York, if they were playing in New England, then I would think that they would have less of a chance in this. Like, us say the caliber of the opposition. If that was the same, but they were playing in the Northeast or in the Midwest, I'd have more cause for concern. But they're going to Jacksonville, November. It's going to be like what, 70, 75 degrees or something. Going to Tennessee, it can be a little cool and rainy, but it's not, it's nothing. It's not going to be them facing adverse conditions. Chicago can be a little bit different. The Vikings have actually been pretty good in
Mm,
Chicago the past couple of years, albeit like some very ugly, ugly games. But they've actually, I think they've won their last 2 or 3 games in Chicago. Arizona, though, that's a good point that you make. Fortunately, I mean, Arizona plays indoors as well, but it's good that they have a winnable game at home after being on the road for so long.
mm. And like I say too, week 12 in Chicago, that's about the time where the weather starts getting interesting. So that could be like a
That's
really
true. Yeah.
intriguing outdoor game. But like I say, I mean, this is by far the quote unquote easier stretch of the schedule. But like I say, 3 road games in a row is never easy. And then we finish the year, week 14, at home against Kirk Cousins and the Falcons. Maybe we'll see. We'll see if Penix is in by then or if it's still Kirk. Week 15 is our Monday night game against Chicago at home, where we debuted the Winter Warrior jerseys.
Mm.
And then we travel to Seattle, which is going to be another intriguing matchup because Seattle, they strike me as a team that's kind of in the I guess not really rebuilding phase, but they're kind of teetering between that. And then they host Green Bay, and then we travel to Detroit to end the year. So the last few games are at home against Atlanta, at home against the Bears on Monday night, at Seattle, at home against the Packers, and then at Detroit to end the year.
Yeah.
So a very division heavy ending, but most of those games are at home. So it's kind of nice because I remember, what was it, 2022, all of our home divisional games were literally done by week 7 or like week 8. We were done by Halloween at home against all the division opponents, which was kind of intriguing. But now we kind of have a lot of them at the end. Thankfully, we take on Chicago at home in December, and we take on Green Bay at home in December. Because obviously, the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field is a lot different than, Lambeau Field in October. And then same with Soldier Field. But
Yeah.
anyway, so what are your kind of thoughts on the last several games?
God, I mean, the start of the schedule is challenging, but this is going to be just kind of as I said earlier, like the Vikings, I hope that they have something within them to play spoiler this year and knock a team out of playoff contention, or let's say, you know, prevent a team from winning a division or prevent a team from getting home field advantage. I know that those aren't, moral victories, they don't help a whole lot, but like to rise to that occasion and step up your game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Atlanta is a team that I think with Kirk Cousins as their starter, they're going to be thinking, hey, we've got a shot at the playoffs because, last year they were probably a quarterback away from winning that division over Tampa Bay because, Baker Mayfield made a big difference for the Bucks. But of course, I'm looking forward to that game. God, that was maybe that in the Saints game when we had the Pastronaut as quarterback last year. Those were maybe the 2 most enjoyable games to watch in what was otherwise kind of a forgettable season. Well, besides the 49ers game, I don't want to say, and Green Bay. But I guess after the big injury to Cousins and and of course Jefferson being out, those were the 2 fun games. Home against Chicago. I look at Seattle, right? Um, God, I shouldn't do this, but I'm like, I'm a 4.5 hour drive from Seattle. I've been to a game there; it's a lot of fun. But yeah, going to Seattle that late in the season with just how dreary it's going to be, that God, I just have so many flashbacks of just horrible games for the Vikings, especially in Seattle. Even though we won the last game against them, that was like 3 years ago. Of course, we have to play Seattle almost every year. It's weird. But yeah, week 17 and 18. I just hope they don't end like they did this past season. But it's going to be hard for that to for the Vikings to change course. Yeah, that end of the season is not that. There could be, we could finish the season potentially, unfortunately, dropping our last three. If the Packers are playing more like they did in the second half last year, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, though, but also I'm going to kind of flip it around here too. Like the Vikings, if they could get some momentum early on and then ride like a wave to the end here, we could be, vying for a playoff spot. We could be vying for, a division crown or something like that here too, because it's like if we can win, like if we could steal a few games at home, because like I say, I know we have a hard schedule to start, but if we can win at home against the Niners, a team we've had pretty good success against at home against the Texans, the Jets are going to be interesting. If we can at least get one against Detroit, and then take down Indy, Jacksonville, and or Tennessee. I mean, that's about 7 or 8 wins right there. But it's just kind of one of those things where I have a feeling once we get to, like I say, about week 9, week 10, we'll kind of have an idea of where we're at. Now, I'm not ready to say this season is over by any means because we still have Jefferson. Hawkinson will be back at some point. Aaron Jones is an upgrade at the running back position. Ty Chandler looks pretty good. We have a defense that's starting to mold more like the Brian Flores style of defense. We have more pieces that fit that style of defense better. Secondary still scares me, but they're young. And with the addition of like Stephon Gilmore and Fabian Moreau, those could be a good couple of pieces to, at the very least, help out with the young guys, kind of get them moving and going. So, real quick, like my general thoughts and my opinions are if you had to ask me where I think we'll finish this year, I say we go, this might be optimistic, 9-8. I say 9-8 because we're going to probably be in more games than we're not going to be in. And if we can steal a couple of games here, I still feel good enough for our roster. Like if we could get some momentum going, because again, we still have Jefferson, Addison's still on the team, Hawkinson's still good. We still have the weapons on offense to get stuff going here. It's just the quarterback position is a question mark.
Yeah.
But Sam Darnold, at least in the action that I've seen, looks like he's a lot more comfortable than he's ever been.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't say our offensive line is a top 3 offensive line here, but it doesn't have to be because he's actually also getting tutelage from Kevin O'Connell, who, is a quarterback himself. And if we know anything about, remember Kirk Cousins, when Kevin O'Connell came on board, Kirk Cousins had like 2 of his best years he's ever had, numbers wise. So if we could at least get 9-8, then I'll love where we're at. I could also see like worst case scenario, maybe a 6-11. Best case scenario, we go like 10-7, 11-6. But I'm gonna say 9-8 as of right now, and I've said that pretty much since the beginning because I still think our team is a little bit better than a lot of people think, even other Vikings fans. So, but I mean, look, I'm not saying we're necessarily going to be, playing for a playoff spot or anything like that. But again, we're going to be scrappy. We have, some of our toughest games are at home, which never underestimate U.S. Bank Stadium's crowd. And yeah, I mean, like I say, let's just go out there and see what happens. What are your thoughts then, as far as like where you think we'll finish off schedule wise?
Yeah. I think like best case scenario, and maybe this is probably pushing things past my highest level of optimism. Sorry. Um, I think this could be kind of like a 2012 year, or like a 2015, where you don't have by any means anywhere near a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback. Darnold, I'm willing to put his performances from the Jets and the Panthers. I'm willing to put that
Hmm.
aside for sure. The pass protection for the Vikings is overall it's decent. It gets the job done. But the thing is that we've seen that like with Kevin O'Connell, he doesn't run the ball enough. I think that's going to change a little with
Hmm. Yeah, sorry
The
about
team
that.
overall good. I think that's going to change a little having Aaron Jones there, but I think that, in certain scenarios, I think O'Connell has to be more confident with running the ball. Like, just even short yardage, third down situations. They need to balance that out to take some of the pressure off of Sam Darnold, and especially early on when he doesn't have, Jordan Addison out there or TJ Hawkinson out there. So I hope that they can balance their offense more. I feel more optimistic about the defense, I will say. I think that they'll do a overall good job of getting pressure, although I still think that more of that is needed on a more consistent basis from the interior defensive line, especially. I think that's kind of the weak spot, honestly. Even though cornerback, I know that they've been kind of banged up and going through some personnel changes. But if we're looking at this team, uh, if we're looking at the defense, kind of similarly to what they showed us in the middle of last year, up until about I don't know week 13 or 14, then I feel good about that. It's just that can the Vikings hold on to the football a little better than they did last year? Right, they were one of the
Oh,
worst teams
please.
in committing turnovers. Yeah, I know that
Ooh,
doomed
that
them the
was
first couple of games entirely.
yeah, that literally cost us like I don't know. Did you watch the receiver documentary?
Oh no, I didn't.
Wide receiver. You, like I say, if you do, I'd highly recommend watching episode 2 because Kevin O'Connell got on the boys after the loss against the Eagles. Like
Yeah,
I don't know if you remember seeing like around Vikings Twitter that sound clip, but yeah, I mean, like I say, if we could just hang on to the ball, that will help out tremendously. In my opinion, that could be another win right there, just holding on to the ball.
I
And like I
agree.
say, if we go with where we were at last year, I mean, that automatically brings us up to 8 or 9 wins right there, just hanging on to the ball. So it's like one of those things where I agree with you on that one.
Yeah, I think overall, I'm I know this sounds awful. I'm leaning more towards like a 6-win team, honestly. 8 and 9 would be probably the highest I see them finishing, but even that I think is a little, at least from my side, it's a little overly optimistic. But you know, some the 22 team, I didn't think they were going to win anywhere near 13 games. I know that sure some people might say like, oh yeah, they were all one score wins and they got lucky. Like that Buffalo game was just uh, impossible odds. A couple of different plays, and the Vikings somehow won that game. But it's like, well, a win's a win, right? And in today's NFL, a lot of these games come down to those situations. So you know, I would be happy, obviously, if they were able to surprise me. But really, I hope that as a fan that I'm able to look at this as well. How can you surprise me in a way that doesn't necessarily isn't necessarily indicated by wins or by total points or anything like that? What can you do to get me excited for the next year, especially when I look at like some of the new additions at linebacker um, and even some of the receivers further down the depth chart, because someone's going to need to step up at some point. It's kind of like a reliable third receiver. But anyway, I'm still looking forward to the season. I mean, just that ritual for me, it's like every Sunday, or at least as often as I can, I go to my sports bar because I don't have like a viewing package at home, and I like going there to chat with just the few Vikings fans that we have where I live in North Idaho. We have a decent contingency of fans, but a lot of people in this area are from Wisconsin, or pretend that they're from Wisconsin. So, we got to show up in numbers. We got to rep our purple. I'm just looking forward to that. And, for those moments where the Vikings do happen to, maybe out of this crazy schedule, maybe they do win that game against the 49ers, or maybe they do, prevent the Packers from getting in as a wild card at the end of the season. Like I'm I'm here for that, even if offensively we're only putting up about 16 points a game at times.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I agree with you on that one, and I can hear you there too. It's like the 6 win season wouldn't surprise me either. But to be fair, for me, in order for us to get that low, I think it'd have to be like DEFCON Nuketown, like Code Red scenario. Like Sam Darnold is an absolute bust. Jefferson goes down for the year. Hawkinson's done for the year. Addison's suspended for like 8 weeks. It almost have to be a lot of like our roster being very, very depleted to get to that low. However, like I say, regardless of what happens this year, as long as I see enough, that makes me happy, I'm fine. Because I understand this isn't really the year we're really expected to do much of anything. And like I say, the NFC North in general is just going to be a tough division. I mean, let's be honest here. 9-8 in the division this year could very easily be fourth. You
Yeah.
know, very easily be fourth. So it's like take everything with a grain of salt. And as we get into like October, November, then I kind of have a better idea. But yeah, I mean, like I say, so it'll be very interesting. So, and then real quick before we log off here, I also do kind of want to show like the cuts and stuff like that we have. So let me share
Man,
this tab here, and there we go. Alrighty, so here is, as of about 3 o'clock this afternoon, our waived players from, yeah, basically our terminated and waived players. So we'll start off with the waived players. So as you can see, Lewis Seen and Kene Nwangu are the two big ones that have shown up, which Lewis Seen, man, I really had higher hopes for him. But the problem is he just could never stay healthy. And when he had the opportunity, he never really blossomed into that player he was at Georgia. So, yeah, in my opinion, the 2022 draft for Kwesi was not his best, but he has improved. But Kene, though, like, our best return man we've had in a while, that one kind of surprises me because, well, he was such a good return man for us. Granted, I will say he wasn't necessarily the greatest, running back, or we never really gave him the light of day and all that stuff. So I'd say probably Kenne's the biggest surprise. And then obviously, we see Nashawn Wright, Andre Carter II, Henry Bird, Tyrese Robinson, Lucky Jackson, Jashawn Jones, Thayer Thomas, Jacalen Roy, Dallas Grant, and Bo Richter, which is another name that kind of surprised me because of how well he did in like preseason and stuff. But I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of these guys maybe make the practice squad. So, out of those names, do you really have any thoughts or opinions on them?
mine are pretty similar to yours. Living kind of Cortana, my dog's, she's rolling around making all kinds of noise right now. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, from what I heard, because I don't get to watch the preseason games, at least because I don't live, anywhere near Minneapolis, so it's like I only get my scoops here from YouTube media. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like people were pretty high on Bo Richter. I am surprised that Kenne's been waived. Because I mean, now we're rolling with a 29-year-old Aaron Jones, right? We got Ty Chandler, who I don't think he's really he doesn't he hasn't risen to the occasion as a 1A running back for me, even though I don't think the run blocking was all that great this past season. But yeah, and seeing you basically said it there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I say, so those are the, I guess, waves. And then they said the terminated contracts of tight end Nikhil Harry, Duke Shelley, which was kind of intriguing, but when they went out to get Stephon Gilmore, I could see why they probably cut him. Miles Gaskin, Bobby McCain, James Lynch, Robert Tanyan, and Jonah Williams. So the Tanyan one is a little interesting because they brought him in probably as the Hawkinson replacement, but then he got injured. I know he's been having a lot of injury issues. And then obviously Duke Shelley was a Vikings staple, but I wonder if maybe he gets put on the practice squad too, or how that's going to work, or if he ends up on another roster or whatnot. And then, just obviously Nikhil Harry, too many cooks in the kitchen sort of thing. So, but what are your thoughts overall then?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying about Duke Shelley. What he did for like that 9-game stretch or whatever it was 2 years ago. I mean, getting like that pass defense against the Bills to help win that game, that was amazing. Just how he came out of nowhere and just played his butt off. I think he was graded as like the fourth or fifth best corner in coverage in the NFL. Something crazy like that. So it's like, damn it, I wanted my guy back, but I think you made a good point earlier. Tanyan, yeah, I mean the Vikings have they have three other tight ends on the roster now. They still have Nick Muse there, in addition to, of course, Josh Oliver and the legendary Johnny Munt. And I guess what was I going to say? I didn't have anything else specific as it pertained to that. I thought that maybe Reisner was going to get released just because he didn't really have he wasn't the healthiest in training camp. So I didn't really think that he made all that much of a difference when he came in last season, but I honestly don't watch offensive linemen all that consistently. So, but yeah, that's about it for me.
Alrighty. And then real quick here, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. Obviously, TJ Hawkinson's on the pup list. The Vikings have played or put Jordan Kunizik on injured reserve, and then placed on injured reserve designated for return linebacker Gabe Murphy and Dalton Reisner. So honestly, those moves, the Reisner one was the one that was probably the more surprising one, but Hawkinson was a pretty solid. Like I say, we knew that was going to probably happen anyway. So my guess is he'll probably be back either right around the bye week or maybe after the bye week.
Hmm.
Would be my guess. Because, like I say, that's where it's nice to have that week 6 bye week. Give those guys an extra week to rest. Reisner, I don't know exactly what happened. He was just kind of put on the injured reserve designate to return list like a couple days ago. So, yeah, I mean, again, kind of thoughts and opinions there too.
Nothing specific. I think that sort of your path to Hawkinson's return, I think that makes sense as well. I mean, because he's going to be out for like at least 4 games, so might as well just hold him out until the Vikings return from London. But yeah, I just the thought is swirling around in my mind that, and I know that cornerback is still an issue of concern as well. But it's like going forward, I see this Vikings team, addressing probably next season, getting they need a guy in the middle of that defensive line who just wreaks havoc, right? Because when the Vikings were a competitive team, they had, of course, Linval Joseph, even Sharif Floyd when he was in there briefly. Before then, Williams, Wall, John Randall, even before that, right? Like that really does make a big difference when you can generate some pressure and just stuff teams in short yardage situations. Excuse me, like that 2017 top of the league defense. And then interior offensive line, just getting better in the trenches there. So I'm hoping that whatever comes this season, I hope the Vikings probably put their priorities in those categories that I just mentioned there.
Yeah, well, like I say, any sort of closing thoughts or arguments on the Vikings just in general, or?
I mean, I'm looking forward to next year. That's for sure. And hey, I mean, I know I've obviously had my critiques here, but I do want to give credit to the front office for what they were able to do, locking up Jefferson for 4 more years after this year and locking up Darisaw. So I think that's great, and how it's going to fall. The expiration of their contracts will fall in line with JJ McCarthy. Like that all looks really good to me. So I think that they're setting themselves up well for the future, and I would think that whatever happens this season, I don't want either of those guys gone from their roles. I hope that they get their extensions.
Oh yeah, same with me. I mean, like I say, I think the Wills are going to kind of take this year as like a learning curve, and then we'll kind of see going into next year. Because the only way I really see this falling apart is if, like, it comes out that like Quasi and KOC are actually horrible and this and that and the other thing, and then the team starts a mutiny or something like that. But I just honestly don't see it. So I feel like regardless of what happens this year, obviously the goal is next year. I mean, obviously the goal is this year. I mean, no one wants to lose, but realistically, I feel like next year is our peak, is our goal, is, where we really start making the noise. With that said, though, I still could see us making some noise this year. Whether or not it turns it into anything like a surprise playoff berth or playoff run, whatever, like I say, I'm not saying we will make the playoffs, but I'm also thinking we're going to be kind of where we normally are, middle of the pack, which in this case would be a good thing because that means we have a solid enough core that all we need to do is work on a couple of pieces here and there, and then boom, we can be right there moving
Yeah.
into next year. So, but
Well
yeah,
said.
I mean, I think that pretty much sums up everything. So, like I say again, thank you, Nick, for joining me and stuff like that. And who knows, maybe we could do this again sometime. Maybe,
Oh,
I always love talking Vikings and stuff like that. And like I say, one last time, don't forget to subscribe to Twisted Wrister Hockey. I'll be sure to link his channel below. But if you're probably subscribed to me, you probably know who he is. And we're not that far away from the hockey season. So again, go ahead and check him out, especially if you like hockey history, hockey knowledge, and the random, videos he posts to his memberships, shameless plug, and stuff like that as well. So until we meet again, this is Jacob. And again, thank you, Nick, for joining me.
yeah, man. I would be happy to come back on.
Oh yeah, like I say, we're happy to have you. So again, until we meet again, this is Jacob. Thank you for joining, and hopefully you guys have a good one.